What's going on, everybody? Hello and welcome to a wheel set review. Today it is the Reynolds AR 41X, a wheel set with a lot of really good things about it and one very big problem. As always, there is a link in the description below to a full written review on La Velocita, and let's dive in now. Let's start with some specs on the Reynolds. We have a wide 27mm external width and a 19mm internal, 41mm deep rims, 20 Sapim CX Sprint spokes on the front and 24 on the rear, a C2 G2 heat-resistant rim brake track treatment from Reynolds. Hubs are a bit of a mystery. They are by Reynolds themselves with not really much information on construction or bearings. All I know is that the rear has a 10-degree engagement. The free hub options are Shimano Campagnolo SRAM Road and SRAM XDR. They come in at a very respectable 1480 grams, as confirmed by my very own scales. They are also tubeless ready, shipping with valves and tape already installed. I didn't set them up tubeless, but I totally would if they were mine. So on paper, there's a lot to like about these wheels, and on the road, there is also a lot to like about them. They are an absolute pleasure to ride. Start with the rim depth. I love a 40mm deep wheel. For me, who spends most of their time in the hills and on undulating terrain, I think 40mm is pretty much perfect. Deep enough to take advantage of the aerodynamic optimizations, not so deep to be a handful in the wind, and a really nice all-round weight. As an all-round wheel set, they perform very well. They feel nice and light on the climbs, they feel speedy on the flats and on the descents. They're very poised when it gets windy. That big width of the rim is great. I love riding a tire at low pressure. I was pretty much able to run these at around 60 to 65 PSI with 25mm tires, and they felt great. They didn't really blow my mind in any one area during the ride, they just felt good pretty much all the time. So a big tick from a ride perspective. So let's talk braking, and these are definitely one of the best carbon clinchers I've found from a braking perspective. The CTG2 brake track that Reynolds have been working on feels very powerful, and it dissipates heat quite well. The only time I found any fade or lack of brake power was when I sort of intentionally tried to overheat the brakes just to see what they can handle. There's really only one hill near me in Adelaide where you can properly overheat a wheel set like this, and they performed very well indeed. I still prefer the feeling and the consistency of aluminium braking, but yeah, the Reynolds performed very well. When they got wet, they were, like most carbon clinchers, pretty poor. You just don't really get any power until you've had the brakes on for long enough to clear the water. So yeah, they're not really any worse than any other carbon clinchers. Once the water has cleared, you do get a good amount of power from them. So you might be thinking that this is all sounding pretty good, and yeah, in a lot of ways it is, but there is that big problem I talked about earlier. And let me show you what I mean by that. I actually rode two sets of these wheels because I reported this on the first set. So they sent me another one, and then I reported this on the second set. That's two different wheel sets on two different bikes, and what you're looking at there is just a lot of rim movement. So let's talk about why this is happening, and there's actually a few causes. So let's get geeky and understand what's going on here. First, you've got a very stiff carbon rim that doesn't want to flex. Next, you've got a bunch of Sapim CX Sprint spokes, which are at low tension by design. That's just how the wheels are made. You can add tension, but it wouldn't stop the flex. Then you've got a hub with a very narrow hub flange on it. Stiff rim, soft spokes, narrow hub. It all ends in that rim movement. I've linked to a slow twitch article in the video description for anyone who wants to read more. So the end effect is that when you're riding out of the saddle, the spokes get overwhelmed by the stiffness of the rim, which leads to a whole world of brake rub. I'm a light rider. I weigh about 66 or 67 kilos, so brake rub from wheel movement is just not something that I have to deal with, and these rubbed all the time on both bikes. Every time I got out of the saddle, just the sound of whooshing on both sides. And it's such a shame because being a light rider means that heavier riders are going to get even more rub than I did. And unfortunately, it just seems to be by design. So as much as I enjoyed the ride feel and the braking, it just drove me crazy every time I was climbing a hill, which I do a lot, to hear that brake rub in the back of the bike. And it's not like these are cheap wheels, they're 2,400 Australian dollars. That's not crazy expensive, it's kind of exactly where the market is for a high quality set of carbon wheels. But if you've spent that amount of money for a wheel that moves and rubs that badly, I just don't see how you're going to be happy with that purchase. And I think really, there's not much more to say. They're a wheel that had a huge amount of potential, but they're let down by a very big design flaw. Sorry Reynolds, I tried 2 different sets and got exactly the same results. Well, thank you so much for tuning in as always. Stick around on the channel, I've got all kinds of nerdy bike gear videos and I publish occasionally, so subscribe to get notified about that, and I will see you next time.